Do you mind if I spend a second being open and honest with you all before we start? YouTube is currently demonetizing horror podcasts and narration across the platform. I know it's only a matter of time before they hit us. That would mean half of our revenue gone overnight, including up to 2 months of unpaid earnings that we will never get. I'm telling you this because we need your help. The only way EerieCast can be safe from financial calamities like this is with your help. So please, consider going to eerie.fm, our brand new feature-filled website, and sign up for premium membership for just $8 a month or $70 a year. You'll unlock access to bonus episodes of your favorite shows, exclusive audiobooks and ebooks, members-only series, and you'll never have to listen to another ad on any EerieCast episode for as long as you're subscribed. Help us become independent of platforms that treat creators such as me like we are disposable. Again, that's EERIE.FM, Eerie.fm. Thank you so very much. Now then, I'll make this intro quick. Today I've prepared an assortment of allegedly true and terrifying stories from folks in Appalachia, dwellers of haunted homes, and people who wished they'd never seen what they saw. This is Unexplained Encounters. I'm Darkness Prevails. And now, let's begin. Nobody here knows that name. From Adelaide. I'm posting this from England, so if I use some slang, sorry. In the summer of 2019, me, my parents, my little sister, and 3 of my friends went to my late grandparents' house, who had sadly died the summer before due to old age, which makes sense because they were pretty old. My family is originally from the south of England, but moved here when I was 7. My parents had decided to keep their cottage out in the woods of Virginia. I was glad they kept the cottage, as me and my sisters had basically grown up here. We came here every summer since we were 7. As I've gotten older, the cottage had begun to give me not necessarily a weird vibe, but there was something off-putting about the woods around it. Something wrong, almost. I have quite a unique name, and most people just call me Ada, as it's easier to pronounce and remember. The only person who ever called me Adelaida is my grandma and teachers, the ones who don't like me. At the cottage, it was me, my sister Hannah, and my 3 friends, Kate, Loria, and Mylene. We were all down at the cottage for my 16th birthday, which was the weekend before with my parents. We were going to be there for a week. For context, I'll tell you a bit about the layout of the cottage. The front door had a path leading from it into the forest surrounding it. As you walked in, there was a big foyer with those weird L-shaped stairs in the corner of the room that led upstairs to all the bedrooms. It had 2 doors on either side of the room, one that led to the kitchen and the other that led to the living room. The kitchen had the door to the deck and the backyard that was basically just a patch of grass with a pool and surrounded by forest. There was no separation from the garden to the forest around it. The living room had a huge window at the side of the room that was adjacent to the couch and TV, so you couldn't see it unless you were standing facing towards the front of the house. There was also a door right next to the couch that led to the downstairs bathroom. The upstairs had a big landing that had a small snug area with a couch and a TV with video games. Once you get to the snug room, there are 2 hallways, one that leads to my parents' master bedroom and my little sister's room. Then the other hallway led to the 2 rooms my friends and I were staying over in. Me and Loria were in the bigger room, Jess and Mylene in the other. Now, this description may seem a little long and pointless, but trust me, it's important to the story. On the first night we were there was nothing wrong. In fact, everyone seemed to be having a great time. We played in the pool and drove 3 hours to the beach that wasn't far from the cottage. We went fishing, played in the sea. When we got back, my stepdad put on the fireplace in the back garden. We all sat around the fire pit, talking as it was midsummer, and it wasn't too dark out by then. After that, we all went to bed. Nothing out of the ordinary so far. This feeling of normalcy stayed present throughout the second day. My friends and I chilled by the pool while my stepdad and mom went to the city about 2 hours away to get food to last us the rest of the week. It was about 8 p.m. on the second night. My parents and sister still weren't back yet, which wasn't weird as it was a pretty busy city and the traffic was bad at the time. The sun had already begun to set below the tree line, and the sky was this blue-orange color. The sun was low enough to make the trees' shadows stretch like long fingers over the forest. The cottage was built south-facing, so there wasn't really a time of day when the pool and backyard didn't get any sunlight. I was just lounging on one of those pool donuts along with Loria and Jess, while Mylene sat on a sun lounger lining the pool. Those of us in the pool were just chilling and having a conversation, while Mylene was reading something, which was her choice. We did ask if she wanted to come in the pool, but she said no. She cued in once in a while to voice her opinion on the topic, but she wasn't very active in the conversation, which made it easy to get lost in the conversation and forget if she was listening. We were probably talking about something stupid, like the boys in our year, or girls we didn't like, and I turned to the sun lounger that Mylene was sat on 10 minutes ago, but she wasn't there. I began to look around to see if she was anywhere else in the background, but she wasn't. I asked the other girls if they had seen where she went, but they hadn't. I searched the whole cottage and our rooms to see if she was okay, but she was nowhere to be found at all. I went back to the garden to start shouting for her, because I'd begun to worry, as did the other girls. The sky was growing darker now, but the forest was almost pitch black, with only the pool light acting as a torch. I caught a glimpse of the bright pink bathing suit Mylene was wearing about 6 feet into the tree line. I told Loria to grab a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, and she did, coming back in about 30 seconds. I shone the flashlight towards where I thought Mylene was standing, and I called her name. She didn't answer. I shouted again, and still no answer. Jess had begun to edge closer to the tree line, as we all grew more concerned for Mylene. Now, what we did next was such a dumb girl horror movie action, but we didn't know what would happen after. We all unanimously agreed to go into the trees to get her, so we began to march our way over to her, slightly annoyed because it felt as though she was purposefully ignoring us. I got within arm's reach of her and noticed she was looking up, but it didn't cross my mind to look up and see what she was looking at. As I made my way around her to see her front, my stomach dropped. When I saw her face, I nearly started to cry. I shouted for Jess and Loria to come look at this, and they both had almost the exact same reaction as me. She was still, arms by her side, looking up into the sky, but her eyes looked white, almost as if her eyes had rolled all the way to the back of her head. There was this weird saliva foam coming from the sides of her mouth, but no noise at all. Like, at all. I grabbed her face to try and see what was wrong with her, trying to make her look at me. I began crying, thinking she was having a seizure or a heart attack, and I started shouting for Jess and Loria to help me. But no one moved around me. I looked away from Mylene's face to the other girls, and I've never felt fear this much in my life. Jess was staring up at the same thing Mylene was, with her hand over her mouth and sobbing quietly, and Loria was nowhere that I could see. I then felt this overwhelming urge to tilt my head up and look at the sky. So I did. And when I did, my blood ran freezing cold. There was something unnameable up in the trees above us, an almost humanoid figure with gray-brown fur that covered its whole body, besides some patches where the almost black dry skin could be seen. Its face was a mix of a deer and a skeleton, almost as if someone had taken a deer skull and tried to paint it to look alive. The eyes were what terrified me the most. They were human eyes. It almost looked like a human wearing a suit of whatever that creature was supposed to be. It had wolf paws for feet, and the legs were like dog's legs as well. with that weird backwards elbow that dogs have. But I could tell that if it stood upright, this thing would be over 6 feet. What looked like hands gripped 2 thick tree branches, with its long claws winding around the branches. I stared helplessly at it as tears quietly, literally streamed down my face. Then its face contorted into something that looked almost like a smile. Its mouth made the shape of a smile, but its eyes did not change, still holding that strange dead human eye look that made me want to vomit. I was stood staring for what felt like hours, surprised it hadn't jumped down and killed me. That's when its mouth began to move. No sound came out besides a weird straining sound, the sound you make after you try to breathe without anything to breathe from. "Run," is what I picked up from the thing, so I grabbed Mylene and Jess by the wrists and began to sprint towards the cottage, which wasn't too far away from where we were standing, close enough to be able to see it. I heard rustling and panting coming from behind us, and we broke through the tree line into the garden, but I refused to stop until we were inside the kitchen with the back door locked. We made it back all in one piece, where we found Loria, who was standing at the door now with a bread knife in hand. But again, Mylene was not stood next to me. I heard a toilet flush upstairs, and Mylene made her way downstairs looking completely fine. "Oh, are we done outside? Sorry, I had a quick shower while you guys were in the pool." "What? So you weren't just outside in the woods?" I asked her with the utmost confusion. "Those creepy as heck woods? Nah, you couldn't pay me to go in there." She said it so calmly and jokingly. I looked over at Jess, who was there with me the entire time, and she just let out a groan, sinking down the wall to sit on the floor. There was nothing in the garden directly, but I could see just enough to know it was out there, standing in the tree line around maybe 6'9", staring directly at us with those beady little eyes. Then I could just make out that disgusting, awkward smile as it retreated back into the forest, right as I heard my mom and stepdad pulling up in the driveway. We told her what had happened, expecting her not to believe us, but when I described what it was that we saw, her face went pale. "Whatever you do, do not go back into the woods after dark. I don't care what you see or who you think you see. It lies." I was surprised the girls wanted to stay the rest of the week after what had just happened. I expected them to make up some excuse and get their parents to pick me up, but they didn't. Nothing else happened for the next 2 days, probably because we stayed inside when it got dark, and when we were awake we kept all the lights on in the house. I'd begun to think that that may have been the only thing that would happen, until the second to last day. We were all sat in the fire pit in the back garden just before the sun went down. My stepdad put the fire out before the sun dipped below the earth, and we all piled inside in the sitting room to watch TV. I went to go on my phone, but it wasn't anywhere at all. I couldn't find it. That's when I looked to the back garden from the big window of the living room, and there it was on the seat in the fire pit. It had been a couple of days since what happened had happened, so I didn't feel that scared going out into the garden to grab my phone real quick. That's all I intended to do. I noticed that when I left the living room, Loria wasn't there. Normally, I would go look around the house for her, but this time I could remember so clearly that she had gone to her room to get changed out of her clothes because she had asked if she could borrow some of my PJs. It was so clear in my mind that I knew where everyone was, which gave me such an uneasy feeling, almost like my mind knew something I didn't, always taking mental notes of everything. I made it outside to the fire pit by the pool. The only thing audible was the soft sound of the water in the lightly lit pool. It was quiet, almost too quiet. I grabbed my phone and went to head towards the door to the kitchen when I heard a faint voice calling my name. "Adelaide." It was quiet enough to be a whisper, but loud enough for me to not be imagining it. I ignored it, knowing what was out there, and I started towards the door. Adelaide. I froze in place. It was Loria's voice calling me from the tree line. She sounded stressed, maybe even pained, but still she had an almost joking or playful tone too. Exactly like her. Please help. I'm hurt. I fell over in the woods. I laughed to myself as muscle memory took over, and I began to walk towards the trees. I'm coming, don't worry, you idiot. But then I froze in place as fear grew in my chest. I felt almost sick. The only people who ever call me Adelaida are my dad and my grandmother. Everyone else that I know calls me Ada. I don't even think my friends know that my full name is Adelaida. My eyes darted to the tree line where the calling was coming from, and I saw it. That god-awful smile just behind the tree line. A tear rolled down my face. The urge to walk forward became overwhelmingly strong. I began to stalk towards that smile against my will, or so it felt, when I felt an arm grab my wrist. It was Loria. Ada, what the heck are you doing? She said, as she looked over my shoulder to where I was walking towards. I don't know. I thought I heard you calling me from the woods. You said you'd fallen over. No, I'm right here. Let's go inside. The woods give me the creeps at night. We went into the kitchen, and I looked back to the trees one last time. There it was, standing closer towards the garden. It was shaking its head, no. I didn't get a wink of sleep that night. Thoughts raced through my mind. What would have happened if I went into the trees to that thing, if Loria hadn't come out to get me? Honestly, I didn't want to find out. We went home a day early, due to the weather, as it started thundering the last day. As we made our way out of the woods, a tree caught my eye. It was the tree that me and my grandma carved our names into. But she hadn't carved Ada into the tree. She had carved my whole name. The tree said, Adelaida and Grandma, with a huge 5-finger claw mark right below it. I never went back to the cottage after that time. Gladly so. Me, Loria, Jess, and Mylene stayed friends throughout the rest of school, and we frequently talked about what happened until the topic died down and became a distant, horrifying memory. I still meet up with them often, and the week gets brought up sometimes, but now we laugh and look back on it. Deep down, though, I know that whatever was in that forest was pure evil, and I often wonder what would have happened if I went into the woods. Would I still be here today? I'm 21 now. This happened years ago. I still have nightmares about that week, and sometimes when I'm alone and it's just quiet enough, I hear that voice, Loria's, softly shouting my full name, and it gives me chills every time. They are always listening. From My Life in Thriller Mode. This series of unfortunate events takes place in Latin America. Before I begin telling my story, it's important to understand my family's history. Chinese blood runs through my veins, and it is said that our ancestors practiced dark magic. It has always been kind of a taboo topic for us, the unspoken subject during family gatherings and dinner. With this in mind, it was not strange for me to be drawn to the unknown. I've always been a fan of horror movies, the paranormal, and the gorier it gets, the better it is for me. Around 15 years ago, as children, we had access to unlimited content, which was not always appropriate. We could watch someone being shot in the face on YouTube, someone falling off a cliff, half of their head gone. It was crazy, and my life back then was a search for the dark side. Not like I would practice witchcraft or anything, but I was definitely learning more about types of ghosts, creepypasta, and violence, while also making cookies in my free time. The reason I am telling you this is because it's important to the main story. I've always worked a corporate job, which I kind of liked, which also explains why I feel dead inside. It was a well-paying job from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I lived alone with my puppy and had a very simple life. We used to live in the same house, but I rented the apartment to my grandfather back then to feel independent, I guess. The house was pretty big, and all I know is that a police officer used to live there. That was the story, nothing more than that. I'd also broken up with my boyfriend at the time, so you can imagine I was a mess. Those moments are very appealing to uninvited guests. A few parts of the encounters are blurry in my mind. Not sure if that is a good or bad thing, but as of right now, I feel it's a blessing. So it all started with bruises on my hands and arms while I was sleeping. I kept telling myself that I probably hit something during the night or earlier in the day and didn't remember. It had been a while since I'd seen my mother, and work was overwhelming. I was feeling tired all the time, and my dinners were mostly chicken noodle soup. I was getting ready for bed when I heard a voice whisper my name, Stephanie. A cold sensation ran through my body, and I couldn't move. Was what I just heard real? My puppy was right next to me, and he didn't want to leave my side. He was in a guard position. I decided it was probably the long work days getting into my already weak mind. But then, the dreams started. I was alone in a supermarket. The shelves were full, and I couldn't see the end of them. I just kept walking endlessly through the giant aisles. I felt uncomfortable, like someone was watching me, getting closer, even though I couldn't hear footsteps. The lights began to flicker, and then I saw her, a tall woman with a thin figure. She had long gray hair and was wearing a white dress. Now that I think about it, it seemed more like a hospital gown. Her smile, I'll never forget that smile. It was twisted, stretching from one side to the other, like it would hurt to hold it that way. I couldn't move. I remember her running toward me, incredibly fast, holding a vessel, a blue vessel with strange symbols. To this day, I don't know what they meant, but I felt like she wanted me inside it. Suddenly, thank God, my legs responded, and I ran. I ran like my life depended on it, because it felt like it did. She was getting closer. I dropped to my knees and began to pray then. Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here, ever this day be at my side, to light and guard, to rule and guide. I repeated the prayer over and over again. I could see myself almost yelling at the thing to go away, and I felt protected by a warm force. I was so scared that I didn't even notice I was crying. And in the blink of an eye, I woke up. I was drenched in sweat. It took me a few minutes to catch my breath and to process what happened. I walked into the living room. At the time, I had fuchsia furniture. When I was about to sit down, I noticed something. Worms. Not just one, there were several. Small worms still alive. Those worms, the kind that appear when something is rotten. I even had one fall from my hair while I was at work, and to this day I still don't know how they got there. It took me the rest of the night to clean everything, and I could not go back to sleep after that. I was miserable at work. I wasn't myself. I used to be the top performer, the one everyone would hate, but at that point, I didn't even care anymore. The weekend arrived, and I asked my friends to come over to cheer me up. We made sushi and started watching scary movies, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like my life was getting back to normal. I laughed, and just as they were about to leave, the patio door opened by itself. And I'm talking about a heavy metal door, opening all on its own. Then the TV turned off and on a couple of times. Everything happened so fast that even my friends didn't know what to do. They're into crystals and energy, so we decided to ignore it, to pretend nothing had happened. But the real turning point was yet to come. I decided to stay a few days with my mom. Maybe a change of environment was all I needed. During those 4 weeks, I lost around 20 pounds. And while some people might say I looked great, I did not feel great. One night we had a girls' night, ate pizza, and I had 2 days of such deep sleep that I felt like I would never wake up. I was starting to feel better. But on the drive back home, she said something that made my heart stop. She asked me if I was okay. That might sound normal to you, but I've always been good at hiding my feelings. So I asked, almost defensively, "Why do you ask?" She hesitated. "Last week before you arrived, I had a strange dream." "What was it about?" I asked. "I was in a white space. There was nobody there except the devil." I felt my chest tighten. "I was on my knees and he told me, 'I will take one of your sons with me.'" Now, my mom has always been very religious, so she said she started to pray. "He said again, 'I will take one of your sons with me.'" And so she prayed harder. "He just kept saying it, 'I will take one of your sons with me.'" She said the voice became angrier, frustrated by her prayers. "And I said to him, 'I will not give you any of my sons.'" She said the dream went on for what felt like hours. She woke up, at last, crying. When she finished telling me, there was a long silence. I was having this internal battle, deciding whether to tell her everything that had been happening to me. But I knew I needed help, so I told her everything. About the worms and bruises and the lights, everything. Her expression changed. Not angry, just sad. Like she was hurt that I would keep all of this from her. She stayed with me for a few days. I began praying more often, every night before going to bed. I'm not telling you to do the same as I did in a situation like this, but for me, I felt relief. I started to take better care of myself. I began going outside again, something I had completely stopped doing for a while. Feeling the sunlight on my face, little by little, the events began to fade. I even kept a Bible by my side. Again, I'm not telling you you have to do that. I'm just saying it worked for me. When I look back on this, I realize I used to be someone who loved taking risks. Someone who would search anything, watch anything, without limits, dedicating so much time to the horrors of the world. And while that part of me still exists somewhere, I'm not the same person anymore. The days of searching for monsters are over for me. Because I learned something. Sometimes those monsters find you first. I never truly understood what triggered everything that happened during that time in my life, but I'll tell you this. The entities beyond our world are always listening. They wait. They wait for you to be weak, tired, broken, and that is when they act. I had a rough year, and it did not go unnoticed. You are not asking for my advice, but I'll give it anyway. Take care of yourself. keep your mind busy, and remember, they are always listening. My Dogman/Wolfman encounter. From Jason from Texas. Me, my wife, and my son were on our way back home from seeing a movie. So, needless to say, we were in a good mood. We were laughing and joking around about the movie we just saw. It was a Marvel movie, if I remember right, but I can't be sure which one. Anyway, we live in a small farming town in Texas, so that in itself should tell you what it kind of looks like here. As we were slowing down a bit, coming around a curve into the outside of town, right before the turnoff to get onto the street we live on, there was what I thought was a darn big wild hog in the middle of the road, eating something. Now, if you live out in the country, you know you don't want to hit or get hit by a wild hog, and it doesn't matter what kind of vehicle you're in. So I slowed down, way down. I sat there for about a minute, and the thing didn't move. So I decided to flash my lights to maybe spook him, so it would run off. But when I did that, something didn't look right. So I flipped on my brights and regretted it almost immediately. For reference here, I'm in a 4x4 Chevy Avalanche with a grill guard, so I sit up off the ground a little ways. When this thing stood up, it was head and shoulders above my cab. As he stood up, and yes, it was a he, because it was very plain to see, I heard my son say, "Dad, what the heck is that?" And my wife was crying, saying, "Oh my God," as the thing turned around to glare at me. What we could clearly see now was a dogman or wolfman. He glared right at me with these glowing yellow-red eyes. Then he growled this deep, vibrating, frightening growl that you can hear even with all the windows up. Feel it deep inside your chest, too. My wife, crying, crawled into the floorboard, and my son was panicking in the back seat. But me, I was frozen. Not necessarily out of fear or panic, but that dang growl of his. That somehow locked me into place, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't move. My hands were white-knuckling the steering wheel, and I was just stuck there making eye contact with this thing. All of a sudden, this image ran through my mind in a second. A vision of this thing running and jumping through my windshield, ripping out my son's throat, tearing my wife apart, not being able to do anything to stop it, to help my family. As that went through my head, I swear that thing smiled at me. And right then, he snapped his head to the side like someone slapped him and dropped to all fours. He ran off so fast you could barely see him. As soon as I could move again, I slammed my foot down on the gas, and we got out of there. These days, we don't talk about it. My wife just refuses, and my son will say, "Yeah, I remember that day," then quickly changes the subject. But me, I can remember everything, those eyes, the hatred and anger in his thoughts towards me, the thoughts I saw of what it wanted to do. To this day, it frightens me, and I hope and pray I never see it again. Something terrific for you guys to hear about. From Snowpup1. I have a horror story that happened to me in 11th grade, and it was horrific. So here I go. I hope afterward you'll be able to sleep well tonight, by the way. So at my school, I was at basketball practice, and I went to use the school shower to clean myself. But I'd slipped and woke up a few hours later in the darkness. When I got up, I heard heavy breathing, and I went to find out what the noise was. I stood there, paralyzed, the cold tile stinging my bare feet. The heavy breathing wasn't coming from the stalls. It was coming from the shadows near the back equipment cage. It was ragged, wet, like someone struggling to catch their breath after a long run. As my eyes adjusted to the pitch black, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The heavy metal door to the hallway wasn't just closed, it had been propped shut from the outside with a heavy equipment bench. I was effectively locked in. "Is someone there?" The breathing stopped instantly. For a minute, the silence was so heavy I could hear the blood thumping in my ears. Then a soft metallic tink-tink-tink sound started. It was the sound of something hard, like a ring or a tool, tapping slowly against the metal lockers. Step, tap, step, tap. Someone was walking toward me, trailing their hand along the lockers in the dark. "Coach? Mike? This isn't funny." No one answered. Instead, a locker door about 10 feet away creaked open slowly. The hinges screamed in the silence, then another one, and another. Someone was opening them, one by one, moving closer to my stall. I didn't wait to see who it was. I grabbed my bag, shoved my shoulder against that propped door with every bit of adrenaline I had, and I felt the bench scrape across the floor as the door gave way. I did not stop running until I hit the streetlights in the parking lot. The worst part? When I got home and emptied my bag, I found a small rusted locker key tucked inside my shoe. I don't own a locker key, and when I checked the school records the next day, a janitor from back in the day passed away in that locker room 3 years ago to that day. The Man at My Window, from Zane. I'm 33 years old. I currently live with my wife and 2 kids, but what I'm recounting here dates back to when I lived alone at 23 years old, a whole decade ago. The story starts with me driving home after a birthday party for my niece at the time. She had just turned 9, but when I got home I found the front door unlocked. Rather than thinking the worst of it, I simply thought, dang it, I forgot to lock the door. How careless of me. Probably my fault for being in a rush to get to the birthday party. When I walked in, that idea was further solidified, because nothing had been ransacked or stolen from my apartment. That was until I found black handprints, the size of an adult's, lining my bedroom doorframe and the foot of my bed. As I said before, I lived alone at the time, so the thought of a homeless man or some stranger under my bed creeped me out. But when I looked under the bed, I found nothing. Not a single trace of another soul. The night after that, I was on a call with my mom to just talk and chat. When I brought up the black handprints from the night before, she froze up, saying that a single man who lived in the apartment some while ago had died there because of a fire. She said the handprints could be from the dead, his spirit haunting me. She laughed it off though, and so did I, and I thought it was just a joke. But for the following week, I found more and more handprints appearing, spots where I would have just cleaned too, not even 10 minutes ago. I had just ended a phone call with my dad when I heard a distinct tapping on glass. Mind you, I lived on the 2nd floor of the apartment complex, so I freaked out and froze up, hiding under my bed without making too much noise. I remembered the window next to it was open, just a little bit, and that little bit was all that dark figure needed to enter my home. And enter it did. Something came inside, something with burnt, crispy skin that smelled somehow of bleach and burned skin at the same time. Something akin to roadkill forgotten in a Texas heat wave for a week and left to burn there on the road. As the figure moved throughout the apartment, I heard it searching the closet just 3 feet away from where I lay hidden, searching for me. It was about to find me, when I heard a ring. I'd left my phone downstairs, and it was now ringing. I knew this was my chance. While it was distracted, I bolted out of my hiding spot and landed in the bushes outside my window about 15 feet down. By some miracle, I landed softly. Even so, I heard it coming for me. I always kept my keys clipped to my side. If I hadn't, I'm not sure I would be here right now. But I got to my car and I started it. I reversed, skidding and speeding away. I didn't stop driving until I made it to where my parents lived. Even to this day, I have nightmares about what I saw and what happened. Was that a real person, or a demon, or a very angry spirit? May God have mercy on us all. I won't dare go back there. From Ace of Spades 666. This happened a few weeks ago. Me and my siblings were out of school for Easter break. Part of our tradition for being out of school for Easter was to go up to my grandparents' house. They live in Maryland, in the Appalachian Mountain region, and behind their house there's this hilly area with lots of grass and rocks. But behind that, there's an area with lots of trees, and part of that area is a small, almost completely hidden trail. You can go back there for a few miles, I'm sure. Part of my fun there was going back there alone. What a stupid idea that was. We live in a really flat area by the ocean, and the mountains are magical. Being out there alone feels like a gift, and in fact it is, when you're not being stalked by some horrifying thing. This is where the story starts. I was regularly out there alone. I would walk until I got to a large fallen tree. The reason I did not want to go past it was because I couldn't see the house anymore at that point, and I did not want to get lost out in the woods. So on the day that I'm going to tell you about, I was walking back there, and I finally reached the fallen tree. So I decided to turn around and keep walking. But a few seconds after I turned around, I got that feeling. You know, that feeling you get when something is about to extend its hand to touch you. That was the feeling, and it gave me chills. I decided to run as fast as I could and to get back to the exit of the trail, and luckily I made it. Once I left, I just stayed inside for the rest of the day. The next day I made the dumb decision to go back in, because I'm an idiot. I honestly don't know what I was thinking. It's probably because I felt brave. I'd possibly discovered something, and I had a big pocket knife. I would probably be fine, right? So when I went back, everything seemed normal for the first few minutes. But then the music I was listening to changed to this extremely quiet song. The kind that's so quiet, you can hear everything around you while listening to it. And as a follower of the paranormal and someone who knows a lot about the Appalachian Mountains, I know that when the forest goes quiet around you, nothing good is about to happen. And in fact, in that moment, the forest went quiet around me. Once again, I decided to turn around and not look back. But as I was walking, I swear I saw something in my peripheral vision, keeping pace with me behind some trees. Its skinny, pale form seemed almost human, but too tall and wrong. I wanted to run like I did before to get the heck out of that area, but I was scared to run this time. I was worried if I did, it would trigger the thing to pursue me, and I didn't know if I could outrun it. So I just walked as calmly as I could, and eventually I got back to the exit of the small trail. And once I did, I ran as fast as I could, but decided to still stay outside. Again, because I'm an idiot. I stayed outside until it got darker, and I couldn't really see a few feet in front of me anymore. That's when I heard footsteps, and you may be saying, oh, it's probably just a fox or a deer. but these were heavy footsteps, and it sounded like it was on 2 feet. I hoped it was just my dad, but when I called out to him, there was no answer. Something was wrong. I speed-walked back into the house and found everybody sitting in the living room. No one had left. None of them could have been the sound I heard outside. I decided not to go back to that trail at all for the rest of the trip. That's all, unfortunately for you, but luckily for me. Honestly, I think it was something that a lot of the listeners of this show might be familiar with, and I don't want to say its name here because listening to this podcast has taught me that talking about this specific thing might draw it back to you. In fact, the reason I think it was stalking me at all was likely that I'd been talking about it quite a lot during that trip, and I think it noticed. My House is Haunted, from Gremlin Studios 78. I live in a modest home in Rexburg, Idaho, with my 2 younger brothers, my parents, and my 10-year-old Chihuahua, Luna. My grandparents live in the house across the street from where I live. We lived in their basement until 2021. Then we bought the house across the street and moved in. My house has 2 upper levels for the bedrooms. The main floor has the kitchen, and the basement has the living room, workout room, and crawl space. No one goes in the crawl space because it's filled with bugs and mice, and it just gives me the chills. My family was the 3rd family to live in that house. The 2nd family moved to Alaska after the COVID pandemic, and the 1st family built the house, but the husband became paralyzed in a horse riding accident, so the house has some holes and weird doors everywhere from his wheelchair ramps and other things. I've always been interested in the paranormal, but I never thought I'd live in a house that was definitely haunted. Although it's only my dad and I who have had these encounters with a supposed entity here, and we are the only ones that believe there is something here. I've had a few encounters with the ghost in my house which have all been interesting. My first few encounters with the ghost were small things, like moving packages that were stacked on the entryway, or hearing slight knocks on our windows and walls during the night. The noises and things started to get weirder the longer we lived in the house. Lights flickered, the ceiling fan would spin like someone tapped it, but one of the weirdest things I've seen was in our laundry room. The lights start flickering in there often, and the toilet in the kitchen bathroom will flush on its own sometimes. Then the washer started to turn on by itself. My dad is a handyman. He has built and wired several houses, so he checked the fuses on everything, and it all looked perfectly fine to him. After the washer incident, the odd things stopped, and I didn't see much else for a while. But then, a few weeks ago, I was up late on my phone scrolling YouTube shorts, and I suddenly had a feeling that someone was watching me. So I quickly turned off my phone and hid it under my pillow, and I glanced up. What I saw there I will never forget. My room was completely dark, which was normal, but I looked around the room and saw a silver blue orb that was floating over my body. It moved close to my ceiling and then vanished. My heart was pounding as I sat up, and I tried to understand what I had just seen. Then I looked toward my closet, and I saw the bag that was filled with pins I'd made hanging on my door start to sway, like something touched it. I told my dad about the experience, but not about me being on my phone, because I wasn't supposed to be on it at the time. Then he told me that sometimes when he would walk into the kitchen from the garage or laundry room, he would see a figure standing in the corner by my desk, and when he would turn towards it, it would be gone. This would happen sometimes, so it couldn't just be weird lighting or bad eyesight. Sometimes I feel like I'm being watched, which I've gotten used to, considering most of the time the feeling is more of a watching over me feeling. Rarely is it ever hostile, though it has been on some occasions. I don't know the whole lore to the house just yet, and I've not caught anything on camera yet, but I truly believe that I have some sort of attachment, considering most of the encounters had something to do with me. I've become used to these things, but I felt like I needed to share this with someone else, so now it no longer has to be just me and my dad knowing about it. It got inside my house. From Ginger Kid. These incidents have been happening for around 12 years now, but last night, it was brave enough to make a move. For full context, we'll go back to the summer of 2013. I was 6 years old when I went to summer camp for the first time with Cub Scouts. It was late at night, and I woke up to use the bathroom. I also completely ignored the buddy system. As we were out in the woods, the bathroom was just a latrine, about 200 feet away from the site my pack was set up at. I unzipped the door of the two-person tent that I had to myself, and I stepped outside. It was dark, pitch dark, save for the sparse moonlight that reached the ground through the tree canopy. As I made my way, I could have sworn I'd heard something behind me, but I didn't see anything. I thought it was a deer, some other animal Appalachia is known for. And then I saw it. Off about 30 feet to my left was a pale, tall thing with no facial features I could make out, given the dim light, except its eyes. And they were so wrong. They were too far apart and too small with no sclera, just black voids that seemed to pierce my soul. It ran away, and I didn't see it again. Well, back in May of last year, I awoke to the sound of tapping on my window, and when I looked outside, I saw nothing, and I was sure of that because the street I live on is very well lit. I got back in bed, and a few minutes after that, I heard my mom calling out, not targeted towards me, but just calling out. The thing was, at the time, she was at work, 20 minutes away from my house. This was the first time I ever felt true fear, because I'd recently learned about skinwalkers. I panicked, running to my parents' room, and I fell asleep in there. That was the last of it, or at least that's what I thought to myself to help me stay calm. Because then there was last night. I was home alone because my parents had to go to an event for work. I was lying in bed, just reading a comic book, when I heard something moving outside my window. I looked outside, which was the first of my mistakes. It moved around to the back of my house, and I followed. I don't know why. I guess I was just curious, not really having much else to do. It stopped about 20 feet from the kitchen window. I parted a small gap in the blind and saw it. This weird dog thing. It had the same void eyes. I gasped, and it hurt me. It looked at me. I should have reacted faster, because when I finally went to run, it had already scrambled onto my porch. I heard it trying to open the back door, fiddling around with the doorknob. I ran upstairs to my parents' room, grabbing the Remington SP-10 that my dad got for if someone ever broke in. I grabbed 18 shells, excluding the 3 already loaded into it, and I ran up into the attic. Then I heard glass. The thing had broken down the door. I was terrified. I really thought I was about to die. I heard it moving around on all fours. First, it was in the living room. I assume when it didn't find what it was looking for, it moved up to the second floor. Then the attic door suddenly broke. No lead up, no warning. It moved slowly, terrifyingly slow, like it knew I was there and that I was scared. It felt like it was toying with me. Every 15, maybe 20 seconds, a step. I heard it inch a bit further. 5 minutes passed, and I'd fully lost track of how far it had gotten inside. I was just too blinded by fear. I then saw its head, its neck, arms, torso. It was facing me, standing up on its back legs. Its arms were longer than its legs, and it was so horribly thin, like it hadn't had food in weeks. It just stood there, eyeing me down like a predator to prey. Prey that was too scared to move. But somewhere inside, I found courage. I aimed, and I fired. I shot at it 3 times. It staggered back a bit, and I reloaded the gun as fast as I possibly could. Another 3 shots hit it center mass. I kept going, until I had no more ammunition. It was dead, I thought. After that many slugs, I'm not sure any of them even missed. I sat there crying to myself. I didn't know what to do. I ran down to the 2nd floor. All the doors were open, everything, cabinets, dressers, beds thrown around. It had been looking for me. I called my parents, then the police. But by the time anyone showed up and went to investigate what I told them about in the attic, they didn't find a body. My parents were extremely concerned and confused. We packed up suitcases and started driving. And for now, we've been staying at a hotel in South Carolina. And I have no idea how long we're gonna be here. While I do miss my home, I'm scared of ever seeing that thing again, whatever it was. What is it with people killing or nearly killing the bad guy and just walking away? If the monster that had been hunting me down all summer appeared in my room and I shot it 20 times, I wouldn't just walk away and go call mommy and daddy. I'd be finding a gallon of gasoline and some matches. It's gonna be a really warm night. Good night. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode of Unexplained Encounters. I've been your host, Darkness Prevails. I'll be honest with you. This show, me, my family, and this network, EerieCast as a whole, we're in a bit of a tight situation because YouTube is demonetizing all the creators it possibly can, apparently. And it seems like the only way we can be safe is if we can get as many listeners as possible to go to eerie.fm and sign up for an account. Listen to our shows there, and especially consider signing up to be a member for $8 a month. Not only will you be supporting us and keeping us afloat, but you'll be unlocking a bunch of cool bonuses. Bonus episodes, exclusive audiobooks and ebooks. Never listen to an ad again on any of our shows. 20% off anything in our merch store, and more. If that's something you can do, thank you so very much for keeping EerieCast going. Till next time, everyone, be safe out there and stay creepy, because this world is a strange one.